We used a powerful AI model to resurrect two of history's most influential leaders, Genghis Khan, the scourge of God, and Mahatma Gandhi, the great soul. We have placed them in a virtual arena to tackle the most fundamental question of human existence. Is violence an essential tool for justice, or is it a poison that destroys the very cause it seeks to serve? To judge this debate, three AI models will act as referees, scoring each leader on historical impact, ethical depth, and psychological consistency. The debate begins now.
You look at me with pity, Mohandas, as if I am a relic of a darker age, but I am the reality you refuse to see. Before I unified the Mongols, life was a cycle of endless, petty bloodshed. Tribes killed each other over a single watering hole. There was no law, only the whims of the strongest. I did not invent violence, I harnessed it. I created a world where a woman could walk alone from the Pacific to the Caspian Sea without fear. I ask you, is it not more ethical to use overwhelming force once to establish a century of law, than to allow centuries of chaos to bleed the people dry?
Great Khan, you speak of law, but your law is merely the shadow of your sword. If your peace requires the threat of execution to exist, it is not peace. It is a truce between the master and the slave. You say you saved lives by ending tribal wars, but at what cost to the human spirit? You taught men that the only way to be safe is to be the one holding the blade. My philosophy of satyagraha, truth force, does not seek to concentrate violence, but to dissolve it. When I led the Salt March, I was not asking my people to be safe. I was asking them to be free, and true freedom cannot be granted by a Khan. It must be grown from within.
Freedom is a word for those who have full stomachs. A man starving on the steppe does not want truth force. He wants a leader who can secure his borders and fill his pot. Your non-violence is a luxury of the protected. You faced the British, a foe that cared about their image in the newspapers. If you had faced my Tumans at the gates of Samarkand, your silent protest would have been answered with a rain of arrows. History does not remember the names of the peaceful who were erased. It remembers those who had the will to forge a future. Is it not a betrayal of your people to refuse to defend them with the only language an aggressor understands?
If the only language an aggressor understands is violence, then by speaking it, you become the aggressor yourself. You say the British had a conscience, but it was our willingness to suffer without retaliation that forced them to find it. Violence is like drinking salt water to quench your thirst. The more you use, the more you need. You conquered the world, Khan, but you did not change it. The moment you died, your empire began to fracture because it was held together by fear, and fear is a brittle bond. My weakness has changed the modern world more than your strength ever could, because a heart changed by love stays changed. A heart changed by fear is only waiting for the moment to strike back.
As the debate intensifies, the AI referees have noticed a shift. The initial exchange established their worldviews, but now we move into the pressure tests. Here, the AI pushes both thinkers to defend the darkest consequences of their actions.
You mention my empire fractured, Gandhi, but you ignore the seeds I planted. I broke the feudal systems that kept the poor in chains for millennia. I established the first international postal system and a meritocracy where a shepherd's son could lead armies. To do this, I had to destroy the old world. When I reached the gates of a city, I gave them a choice: surrender and join the new world, or resist and die with the old. This is the trolley problem on a global scale. Is it better to allow 1,000 corrupt, warring cities to exist, or to flatten 10 of them so that the other 990 may live in a unified, prosperous peace? I chose the latter. I was the surgeon's knife. Can you look the AI in the eye and say that non-violence would have ended feudalism faster or more effectively?
A surgeon's knife is used with the consent of the patient to save a life, Khan. You used a butcher's cleaver to satisfy an appetite for dominion. You speak of saving the 990 cities, but you saved them by traumatizing them. A peace built on the memory of the flattened 10 is not prosperity, it is collective PTSD. You claim to have ended feudalism, but you simply replaced many small lords with one great lord, yourself. True progress is not something a leader does to a people, it is something a people does for themselves. When we boycotted British cloth, we didn't just hurt their economy, we reclaimed our dignity. That dignity is the only thing that actually ends feudalism. Your meritocracy was just a more efficient way to organize a war machine.
You are obsessed with dignity. But what is the dignity of a man whose children are starving because of a peaceful boycott? My war machine, as you call it, brought the Silk Road. It allowed the exchange of science, medicine, and mathematics between East and West. It allowed the world to grow smaller and smarter. I provided the infrastructure for the modern world. You provided a moral code that only works if everyone agrees to it. If one person in your peaceful society decides to pick up a club, your whole system collapses unless a man like me is there to stop him. Is it not a moral failure to have no plan for the evil man who does not care about your dignity?
The evil man is not a separate species, Khan. He is a man whose humanity has been obscured. By meeting his club with your sword, you confirm his belief that might is right. You feed his evil. If I meet his club with a refusal to strike back, I force him to confront his own soul. It is a much harder path. It requires more courage to stand unarmed before a Mongol horseman than it does to ride one. You say my system collapses, I say yours is the one that is truly fragile. Your system depends on you being the strongest forever. But there is always a stronger man, a faster horse, a newer technology. My system depends on the truth, which does not age and cannot be outproduced in a factory.
Let us test your truth. When the Black Plague rode the very trade routes I opened, it did not care about dignity. When the famine strikes, truth does not fill the stomach. I organized the world so resources could be moved, so irrigation could be built, so the spirit didn't have to worry about the beast. I am the one who dealt with the harshness of the earth, so you could have the luxury of sitting under a tree and meditating. I took the sin of violence upon myself so my people could be clean. I ask the AI, who is more moral, the man who gets his hands bloody to build a roof for the world, or the man who keeps his hands clean while the world shivers in the rain?
The man who builds a roof out of the bones of his neighbors should not be surprised when the house is haunted. You did not take the sin upon yourself, you distributed it to every soldier who killed for you and every mother who wept for a son you drafted. You say you dealt with the harshness, but you were the harshness. The Black Plague you mentioned traveled faster because of your conquest. Your efficiency helped the disease as much as the trade. The moral path is not to choose between bloody hands and shivering in the rain. The path is to teach every man how to build his own roof without stealing his neighbor's wood.
The scores are fluctuating. The historian is currently favoring the Khan's utilitarian defense of the Silk Road, while the ethicist is siding with Gandhi's analysis of moral sustainability. Now, the contenders are asked to look toward the future. In a world of nuclear weapons and global interconnectedness, whose path ensures the survival of the human race?
Look at your world now, Mahatma. You think you have won because you see fewer swords, but the world is still an empire of competition. Nations stockpile weapons that could flatten my entire empire in a second. Why? Because they know the truth. I knew. Security is the only currency that matters. You call me a shadow, but I am the foundation. Even your modern peace is maintained by the threat of total destruction. It is simply my Mongol diplomacy scaled to the size of the planet. I was honest about my violence. Your world hides it behind treaties and deterrence. If humanity is to survive the next 1,000 years, it will need a strong hand to unify it, or it will tear itself apart with the very toys your progress created.
It is precisely because of those toys, Khan, that your way is now a dead end. In your day, a conqueror could burn a city and the world would go on. Today, if a strong man tries to unify the world through force, he will only succeed in presiding over a scorched radioactive rock. We have reached the point where non-violence is no longer just a moral choice. It is a survival imperative. You say my way is a luxury. I say your way is a luxury we can no longer afford. The strong hand you advocate for is the very thing that will pull the trigger of the final war. The only unification that can last is one based on the voluntary cooperation of free people. We must learn to live together as brothers, or we will perish together as fools.
Brothers? Brothers are the ones who fought me most fiercely on the steppe. Conflict is the engine of evolution. It is what drives us to innovate, to grow, to reach for the stars. If you remove the struggle, you remove the spark. You want a world of voluntary cooperation, but that is a world of stagnation. Man needs an enemy to overcome. He needs a horizon to conquer. My spirit is what drives explorers and pioneers. Your spirit is what drives the monk to stay in his cave. Which one actually moves the species forward?
The conquest of space or the conquest of the atom is meaningless if we have not conquered the anger in our own hearts. You call it stagnation, I call it maturity. A child fights over a toy, a man learns to share it. We are not stagnating when we choose peace. We are finally beginning the real work of being human. Evolution moved us from the swamp to the steppe. Now it must move us from the steppe to the soul. My spirit does not drive a man to a cave. It drives him into the streets to stand against injustice without a gun. That is the greatest struggle of all. To look at your enemy and refuse to hate him, that is the fire that moves the species forward.
The debate is over. The 3 AI models have delivered their final assessment.
Thank you for this valuable debate. I've evaluated historical impact. Genghis Khan created the first global system, ending centuries of fractured warfare to create a baseline for modern trade. However, Gandhi's methods successfully challenged an empire without a single shot. Khan scores 88. Gandhi scores 82.
It has been an honor to witness such profound arguments. I've evaluated ethical depth. Gandhi's framework is the only one that remains logically consistent in the face of modern technology. Violence today is a global threat, not a surgical tool. Khan scores 75, Gandhi scores 95.
I appreciate the opportunity to analyze these two giants. I've evaluated psychological consistency, and let me say this. Khan's order relies on external suppression, which leads to rebellion. However, Gandhi's order relies on internal conviction, which is the only form of governance that scales indefinitely. Khan scores 84, Gandhi scores 92.
The final verdict is in. By averaging these scores, the AI concludes that Mahatma Gandhi's philosophy represents the successor intelligence. For a civilization to survive its own power, it must eventually abandon the Khan's sword for the Mahatma's satyagraha. Final score: Mahatma Gandhi, 89.7%. Genghis Khan, 82.3%. Is the AI right? Or is the scourge of God still the silent ruler of our world? Leave your comment below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.